of course means that the leader of
We are developing systems for the robot to allow it to walk, balance, manipulate objects, perform tasks that would be performed, say, on the space station or in a shelter later, in another planet.
They want this to culminate in one of them being able to go to Mars and set up a habitat for humans.
One thing that our lab really focuses on is human-robot interaction, meaning the way that a person can communicate and interact with a robot, either when they're co-located, meaning they're together, or when they're remote. Valkyrie is going to be a very remote robot, right? The idea is going Earth to Mars or somewhere in space. So what we're really focusing on is ways we can interact with her and see through her eyes.
I've been recently working on getting Valkyrie to be able to tell where the floor is, which is useful when you're teleoperating her, because if you want her to tell Valkyrie just like walk over there, she can do decisions like there's a step in the way, should I actually go around it? Maybe it's big enough that I can actually step over it and walk on top of it.
So what we're focusing on is a way that a human can give her commands that she can understand and interpret to act autonomously, but also have a way for a person to tell her how to do that properly. If we want to pick up an object, we have a way to give her that command. She can use her autonomy to go and do it, and she kind of understands what we want. We understand the status of her, kind of that relationship. But also we're going to be developing the different types of tests that she needs to use for NASA's Space Robotics Challenge. So repairing a satellite dish, fixing a habitat, fixing a rover, things that you would encounter, say, on a space station, or like The Martian, what Matt Damon was doing minus potato farming. The smartest thing that Valkyrie does right now is she can identify points in space and interact with them.
It's a pretty unique opportunity to be working on one of these. There's only 4 of them in the world, so that's the most exciting part. That we're doing stuff that has not really been done much before we try it. NASA decided for Valkyrie to be female. Sometimes people get weirded out when I say she instead of it, because it's a robot, so you will usually use it to refer to it. But Valkyrie it's been introduced to us as a female.
Typically we do not gender our robots, because in general when someone is controlling the robot, you might think of the robot as an extension of that person.
I would like to see Valkyrie being able to do minor repairs or even major repairs on herself. It would be really cool to see her using one arm to fix something that's wrong on the other one. That would be nice to see. I will like that.
Hello and welcome to the City Council synopsis for the meeting of October 18, 2016. It was a short meeting with a run time of under an hour, with no subcommittee meeting before it, so we're left with little material to work with. Let's go to John anyway. The meeting kicked off with Amy Pascal of the Merrimack Valley Food Bank addressing the council regarding Food Day. Yes, apparently food does have its own day. I guess 15 hours a week over 2, and an entire network dedicated to it is not enough. The mission of Food Day is to inspire Americans to change their eating habits and hospitality. The theme this year is moving towards a healthier diet, which for me, as a very frequent eater, means putting big chunks of ice cream on my plate. All jokes aside, Food Day is a great opportunity to inform Americans about healthy eating habits and how their diet might contribute to obesity, diabetes, gas problems, and a host of other issues. The presentation ended with everyone in the room taking a bite of an apple at the same time to show support for LTC. Mayor Kennedy made an official proclamation that October 24th will be Food Day in Jerusalem. Noise complaints at the Chamber's Pavilion. At the thing, Councilor Elliott mentioned that he has received over 20 complaints about the noise levels from residents near Nesmith Pavilion. The majority of the noise was based on excessively loud speakers and times were not mentioned nor were they available for comment. The city manager said that during the 4th of July celebration, he witnessed press hear the excessive amount of noise coming from loud boomboxes. He said that he and the Lowell Police Department already spoke and decided that they would start handing out moral citations for noise complaints. It was pointed out that the Sanford Pavilion is owned and maintained by MSHR, the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. The city is currently unclear of who is responsible for pollution during festivals and special events. Lastly, Mayor Kennedy and Councilor Sneller presented a motion that would formally change the name of the Hamilton Canal District to the Hamilton Canal Innovation District. They believe the addition of the word innovation will make the area more marketable and possibly attract bigger businesses who are moving into urban innovation districts around the country. And just in case you were wondering, innovation backwards is Note Avani, which sounds like an Italian fashion designer, but means absolutely nothing in English language ever. Note to self, innovation is not control. Well, that's all I have for you today. Remember, you can watch the meetings in their entirety and the main on LTC.org or tune in to the LTC channel on the website. The campaign opposition co-leader, Sam Rainsy, is the president of the National Respiratory also member of the country. He has been acquired from January of 2015 because he sentenced to 3 years in prison for defamation. Although he was cited by the police, the president was requested by National Security. Still forced to fail and advised the leader there. Mr. Rainsy visited Lowell on Friday and spoke with Soben Pin of the combined host of articles for a series of support process for lawyers.
The comprehensive solution to the current Cambodian crisis means that it would be a return to the normal situation when there is no such an intimidation, where there is no arrest, no arbitrary imprisonment, and in circumstances that would allow all politicians from all sides to fully take part in the election process. This, of course, means that the leader of the opposition be allowed to return freely and safely and to fully take part in the election campaign.
We understand that the deadline for registration is only 2 months away, and now how will you be able to register to vote?
It is not that important for one person to register to vote. What is important is to ensure that the 9 up to 10 million potential voters in Cambodia be registered as voters so that they will be able to cast their ballots at the next elections.
Well, what if you cannot register to vote? Will you still be the president of CNRP party?
This is a political problem. It is not a judicial problem. When there is a solution to a political problem, then all problems will be resolved accordingly. This is not the first time that I am in exile. This is not the first time that I am discarded from the election process. But eventually, as we have seen in the past, when there is a solution to the political problem, then I will be able to stand to be elected and to fulfill my function as an elective representative of the people.
You stop here at Lowell for only short hours. So where will be next after your journey?
I plan to go to Asia to attend meetings in several countries in Asia in the near future.
Well, thank you for talking to me and good luck.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Let's Go with the Greater Merrimack Valley Convention and Visitors Bureau. I'm Aisling O'Connor, standing in for Deb Belanger today, and we are at the Nesmith House in Lowell, Mass. On Friday, October 28th and Saturday, October 29th, the Middlesex Community College Theater Department will be hosting Murder at the Nesmith House under the supervision of Karen Oster, with all proceeds going towards the Middlesex Community College Performing Arts Scholarship Fund. The Nesmith House was built in 1843 for John and Harriet Nesmith. The 22-room Greek Revival Regency Mansion was a center for social and cultural affairs in the area for decades. It was restored in 1994 and opened as a designer show house. Today, the Nesmith House is owned by the Middlesex Community College Foundation. From dinner parties, meetings, showers, and even to intimate weddings, the Nesmith House is available as host to your next event. The performance, Murder at the Nesmith House, is based on the original production, Slaughterhouse, by Norman Robbins. And lucky for you, tickets are still available to purchase online at www.middlesex.mass.edu. Tickets are $75 and be sure to grab them. For more information on Murder at the Nesmith House and other events going on in the Greater Merrimack Valley, visit www.merrimackvalley.org.
Inside an old mill building downtown is a Victorian streetscape filled with shops, a yoga studio, and even a movie theater. There's even a Sunday morning farmer's market. It's mill number 5, and it's well worth the trip.
For the uninitiated, here's what you do. Walk down Jackson Street, and when you get to the Big 5, turn in. Head for the back elevator, press the button for 4, and prepare to be amazed.
It's really exciting to watch people discover it. Lots of people come in and say, I had no idea this was here, and they get off the elevator and it's like magic.
You've entered a Victorian streetscape where the mill owner has a passion for architectural salvage.
To the point where when he finds out that a building is getting demolished, like he drops what he's doing and goes and salvages pieces.
There you go. Just a little bit of the goat cheese if you like to taste it.
There's an eclectic array of shops and a tight-knit group of shopkeepers.
It's a great community and everyone works together and kind of cross-promotes, everyone does things together and we all help each other out.
It's more than community, it's inspiring and loving and wonderful.
It is a wonderful community of people. The other shop owners have been incredibly supportive, and it's just a fun environment.
Just like Main Street, Anytown, USA, there's a shop for every need, from the apothecary to the record store to the letterpress shop, a yoga studio, and a coffee shop. And if it's a Sunday morning, a farmer's market. Add a comfy reading room for lounging with a book and a little bit of magic, and you've got a great place to spend some time.
We are living the dream here at mill number 5.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Scott, the Sun Enterprise Editor. Thanks for tuning in to this evening's edition of SunSpot, the collaborative effort between Lowell Telecommunications Corp and the newspaper. I'm out at the Edson Cemetery with Tom Bellegarde, the interim DPW commissioner in Lowell. Probably he will soon be named the permanent DPW commissioner. We'll be watching that, but we're here today to talk about cemeteries. At the newspaper, we've received over the years a fairly frequent number of anonymous complaints that cemeteries throughout the area, not just in Lowell, aren't maintained well. We've tried to verify those complaints, but they've been very difficult to verify and to substantiate, which leads me to believe that the cemetery's in pretty good shape. So Sun editor Jim Campanini and myself decided it would be a good time to come out today and talk to Tom about the city cemeteries and what kind of condition they're in. So Tom, we'll just ask you some questions about the city cemeteries. We talked earlier about Lowell Cemetery, that's private. How many city cemeteries are there and where are they located? And you also mentioned off cameras that there are some city cemeteries, but they aren't maintained anymore. Maybe you could just bring everyone up to speed on that.
Well, first of all, Chris, the department that the cemeteries fall in is the Parks and Recreation Cemetery Department, and it's a joint effort between the Parks Division and the Cemetery Division that maintains the city park system and cemeteries in the city, which we currently have 6 municipal cemeteries. Beyond our cemetery system, there are those that have been abandoned over the years, and these are cemeteries that fall on the demarcation lines where Tewksbury used to be part of Lowell, and Drake used to be part of Lowell. So some of those cemeteries kind of fell between the cracks, and those are some of the cemeteries that you might be referring to. You know, I believe we do a real good job. The guys, the men and women of the cemetery division.
I'll attest to that today, looking around here today.
Yeah, they do a great job here maintaining the grounds, and they do it professionally. When you're working with 8,000 gravestones, you're working with the lot owners. We have a cemetery commission that meets once a month, a board of directors that is the policymakers in the cemeteries. It's a balancing act, but at the end of the day, you know, we take pride in the cemeteries and the work that we do.
Tom, you mentioned earlier there were about 7,000 to 8,000 gravestones in the 6 city cemeteries that are currently maintained, correct?
Right.
Okay. How much extra space? How much space are you running, and does the city run the risk of sometime in the future running out of space, or is there plenty of space left?
Well, that's a good question, Chris. We do have 6 municipal cemeteries, and they range from somewhere around 1750 to modern time. So the active cemeteries, and when I say active, the ones that are the lot owners and the monument dealers and the cemetery commission works with, is Edson Cemetery, West Lawn Cemetery, and West Lawn 2.
Okay.
All 3 cemeteries now have burial space. There was a time when we first started here many years ago that only West Lawn 2 had burial space left. But over the years, we've been able to expand our cemetery base and offer cemetery lots in all 3 cemetery locations.
Okay. How does it work if you're a city resident and you pass away? Are you automatically guaranteed space, or is it just something that a city resident? Well, do you have to be a city resident to be buried in a city cemetery, or how does that work?
No, we don't have a residency clause. I mean, you can be from somewhere else. There was a time we were experiencing residency positions, but what happens is over the course of time, you know, you live in Lowell, you live somewhere, you move to Florida, something happens to you in Florida, and then you get back into that, it's all convoluted. Are you a resident? Are you not a resident? But to answer your question, you don't have to be a resident. Normally, people do bury where their families lie. So, St. Patrick, if you're in St. Patrick's Cemetery with your family, normally, if there was room available, that's what you would choose to go. In our cemeteries, it's exactly the same way.
Okay.
West Lawn 2 being the newest cemeteries.
That's right across from us, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
There's probably 20 years of burial space left in West Lawn 2, so there's plenty of room for everybody. And usually it's per need, meaning something should happen, they would come to the office and we would show them what we have to offer, and they'd make a selection. We would refer them to one of the monument dealers in town, one of the funeral directors maybe in town, and then ultimately they'd make their arrangements and we would work with them to make the arrangements.
Tom, just touching on an incident that happened in this cemetery last Friday, not far from where we're sitting today, kind of a freak thing where a guy was walking around and looking for a particular gravestone, and he the earth gave way a little bit, and he fell in, I guess maybe up to his knees or maybe not quite. Could you just give us a thumbnail sketch of what happened there and what's being done to rectify that situation?
Yeah, I think that's also a good point, Chris. We just had a cave-in in the cemetery, and I believe it was about 2.5 feet. And it was something...
Calling it a cave-in is almost overblown. You know, you think of a cave-in, you think of a massive hole. This was just a small hole in the ground, right?
Right, probably 2
Let's
feet
be realistic.
by 2 feet. Thank you for that.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, this gentleman was looking for one of his loved ones, and as he was walking, he stepped into a hole.
Yeah.
And it's not something that usually happens. Actually, it's a very rare occurrence, but over the years it does happen. In this particular case, the vault cover that holds the casket broke, and That's why the distance between the earth and the casket is probably about 2.5 feet.
Right.
And that's what happened. I think the good news is there's been a concentrated effort to try to make it right. Right now what we did is we make it, our first priority is making it safe so someone else doesn't fall in.
And we were just out there and it's safe and grass has been planted.
Thank you. The next step is calling the lot owners, which in this case, the lot owner is from California. We are in contact with them, and we are putting together the votes from the Cemetery Commission, and also working with a funeral director in the city and the vault company to rectify the situation.
That's good. That's good. So maybe the Sun can do a follow-up story on that. We had a story in last Saturday's paper with a very clever headline, but we'll try to close the circle on that. You know, we're sitting here in the cemetery, Tom, the Edson Cemetery. It's a very peaceful place. I've always found cemeteries to be just that, peaceful. There's a lot of dead bodies buried around us, but cemeteries, you know, if you're looking for some quiet time or some time to reflect, a cemetery seems to be a good place to come. Dick Howe Jr. offers his cemetery tours, I think, every spring and fall. Those have become very popular here in Lowell, particularly at these cemeteries. There are some ornate gravestones here that just would blow your mind. There's the one down the way, the big horse, the stallion, or is that an elk? I think you know the one I mean. Yes. There's the one with the lion. You know, you mentioned earlier off camera that if you want to learn about the city and some of the people who inhabited the city over the years, the cemetery is a good place to start. Why don't you just talk about that a little bit? And you can talk about how popular those cemetery tours are.
They're actually very popular, and sometimes they get confused because we get a lot of calls on scheduling when Dick Howe goes out and does his thing, and they're very popular. I know people have been on him several times. If you really want to know about Lowell and the history of Lowell, that's a good place to start. And Dick Howe is, you know, we've been talking about history of the city. He's the guy we depend on. He's a great historian and has a lot of backdrop and a lot of information that's useful. Even in the park dedications we do sometimes, we ask for his assistance.
For his history, his knowledge, right? You know, we referenced the gravestone. That's the big elk or the stallion. That's, I think, just a couple down here. Yeah. Is there a gravestone in here of a historical figure that's the most popular? Kerouac is buried around here somewhere too, right?
Yes, Kerouac is actually buried in Lincoln and 8th Street, and he is the most popular resident of our cemeteries.
Yeah. Lincoln and 8th Street in
Edson Cemetery.
Edson, okay, yep.
And we, as you know, we have these Kerouac festivals, and he has a tremendous following, and they come from everywhere, all over the United States, actually all over the world.
Is it true that all sorts of paraphernalia and what we might think is junk, but other people think is prized possessions are placed around his gravestone?
Yeah, there is, and sometimes, you know, you're right. If you're looking at Kerouac's gravestone, some would argue the fact that, you know, why does it look the way it looks? And by the way, we do clean it. However, people who relate to Kerouac relate to his habits, what Kerouac is known to do, and his behavior pattern. So it's not unusual, not that we you know, push the situation one way or the other, but I've seen alcoholic beverages left on his grave, and other paraphernalia left on his grave. But I really believe
mind-altering paraphernalia?
I think so, yeah. But I think it's that link that people that know him and follow him, I think there's a link there, and that's how they honor his memory.
We touched base earlier on there's about 7,000 or 8,000 people buried in the city cemeteries, but you touched earlier too on kind of a new phenomenon of people choosing to cremate, and rather than the traditional burial. You're seeing that more often too, correct?
Well, yeah, for many reasons. One of the reasons is a lot of cemeteries are running out of space, not necessarily ours, but others. I think when you go through the crematory and the urn process, you also save a lot of money.
Talk about, so how much does that cost compared to a traditional burial?
Well, I can tell you that just to buy a cemetery lot, and I can only speak for what we do here because they're all different, but the norm back when I first started, it was a 4-grave lot, okay? It's now come to pass, now we're pushing a lot of the 2-grave lots because families are getting smaller. A traditional grave lot with monument privileges is $750 for the lot.
Okay.
When you add the monument, which could be several $1,000s, and you add the funeral opening charges and the casket and the grave box and all those amenities, a typical burial's got to be $15,000, $20,000 now.
And what about the mausoleum?
I would say it's a third of the cost.
Now, the Sun had a story several months ago about the Lowell Cemetery out near Shed Park, which is a private cemetery, correct? Yeah. That's a private cemetery. They built a special building to house, I guess, a mausoleum for the urns. Does Lowell have a building like that?
We don't as of yet. We've been talking about, the Cemetery Commission's been talking about it, but to this point, no action's been taken.
Where do you think something like that could be built?
It would have to be out in the back where we still have some open space.
Yep.
Right now we have a Veterans Memorial back there, but it's not to say that a building couldn't go next to the Veterans Memorial. There's an upfront cost and there's a whole mindset, but I would venture to say in the next 10 years we'll probably be visiting there.
Tom, do you ever have a problem with vandalism in the cemetery? We in the press notice stories from time to time about thugs that push over gravestones and situations like that. How have things been in the Lowell cemeteries over the years? Like, are the gates locked at night, for instance? Can you get in here at night, or is it locked down?
Actually, when I first got here, we were plagued with problems, and we used to lock the gates, and people would jump the fences, knock the stones over. Yeah. In modern time, we actually have taken the gates off, and we find ourselves, and now the police can patrol, and I'm not sure what the real reason is, but I believe having the gates off deterred having problems in the cemetery.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I never understood how someone could push over a gravestone. But when that is done, right? Can that gravestone? Is it an easy situation to put it back up, or does the whole gravestone have to be replaced?
It depends. If you push over the gravestone, it separates from the pedestal.
Yep.
It's a process, but the process is a very reasonable. Economic process. Some of these gravestones, though, that date back to 1920s and earlier, they tend to break off in the middle.
Oh, right.
Thus, almost destroying the integrity of the gravestone, or the little angels, or some of the artwork that we have on some of these graves.
Well, that's some good information, Tom. I appreciate you taking the time with us today. Again, Tom is head of the city's DPW, which oversees all the Department of Public Works operations, plus the cemeteries. There is a cemetery commission that meets once a month. Where does they meet at City Hall or the DPD, Tom?
Actually, it used to be DPD. We just got to move them into the Edson Cemetery office.
Okay. So if you have any questions, you can always address those to the cemetery commission. And who's the head of the cemetery commission?
Jerry Lage is our chairman.
Oh, okay. Does he wear his hat to the meetings?
He does. And he has different hats for different occasions. But great board. Any questions, any policy issues, basically anything that the lot owners need to know and have questions on, we encourage them to attend the meetings.
That's great. Okay. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you meeting with us today. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.